I'm Heather, 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, at my father's retirement party, he did something that made me decide to erase myself from this family, permanently. Picture this: a glittering country club ballroom, 200 guests in designer suits and cocktail dresses, champagne flowing like water. My father stood on stage, microphone in hand, introducing his family one by one. When he got to me, he smiled that smile I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that looked warm to everyone else but cut like glass. "And this is my daughter Heather," he said. "No degree, no future, just freeloads off the family." 200 people laughed. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just smiled, raised my champagne glass and said, "Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me." Then I walked out. The room went completely silent. What happened next? That's what I'm here to tell you. Before I continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to know how this story ends. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back 12 years, to the day I was forced to leave college. The Evans family of Fairfield, Connecticut. That's how we were known. Upper middle class, respectable. My father, Richard Ivans, was CEO of a mid-sized logistics company. We had a 6-bedroom colonial on 2 acres, a Mercedes S-Class in the driveway, and a membership at the most exclusive country club in the county. From the outside, we looked perfect. My mother died when I was 8. Cancer, quick and brutal. I barely remember her face without looking at photographs, but I remember her hands, soft, always reaching for mine. 2 years later, my father remarried. Linda. She came with a son from her previous marriage, Marcus, 3 years older than me. Within months, they weren't just part of our family. They were the family. I became furniture. Not in any dramatic way, you understand. No Cinderella-style abuse. Just invisibility. Marcus got the praise for his grades. Mine were ignored. Marcus got the new car at 16. I got his hand-me-down. Marcus was the future of the company. I was also here. My father never hit me, never screamed at me. He just looked through me, like I was a window he was trying to see past. But there was one person who saw me. My grandmother, Margaret Ivans. My father's mother. She'd call me every Sunday, ask about my classes, my friends, my dreams. She'd say things like, "You remind me of myself at your age, Heather. Underestimated. But I see you." She left me something when she died, something no one in the family knew about. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In this family, I learned to become invisible. What I didn't know then was that invisibility would become my greatest weapon. The day my future was decided for me, I was 20 years old. Sophomore year at UConn, business major, 3.8 GPA. I had plans, dreams. A scholarship application sitting on my desk for a summer program in London. My father called me home on a Wednesday. "Family meeting," he said. Those 2 words had never meant anything good. I found him in his study. Mahogany desk, leather chair, walls lined with awards and certificates. Linda stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, supportive, united. "Heather," my father began, not looking up from his papers, "we need to make some sacrifices as a family. Marcus has been accepted into the Wharton MBA program. It's an incredible opportunity." My heart rate didn't change. I already knew where this was going. "We can't afford both your tuition and his program," he continued. "So we've decided you'll take a break from school, just for now. Marcus's career will benefit the whole family." Linda nodded, her voice honey-sweet. "A girl doesn't need an MBA to have a good life, Heather. You'll find a nice husband someday. That's what really matters." I sat there, frozen. Not because I was surprised. I'd spent 12 years learning not to be surprised, but because some small, stupid part of me had still hoped. "You said you'd support my education," I heard myself say. "You promised Mom before she died." My father's jaw tightened. "Circumstances change. When the company stabilizes, I'll make it up to you." He never did. What I found out later, through a cousin's slip of the tongue, was that there was plenty of money. They just chose not to spend it on me. I didn't argue that day. I just nodded. But inside, I made a promise to myself. This was the last time I'd let anyone else decide my worth. I moved to Boston with $2,000 in savings and a suitcase of clothes that didn't fit the life I was leaving behind. My first apartment was a 400 square foot studio above a laundromat in Allston. The radiator clanked all night. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's TV. I ate ramen for dinner and day-old bagels from the cafe where I worked mornings. But here's the thing about rock bottom: you can't fall any further. I got a job as an administrative assistant at a small logistics company. Entry level, minimum wage plus benefits. The owner, a gruff man named Walter Barnes, saw something in me that my family never had. "You've got a brain, Heather," he told me one day. "Use it." So I did. I stayed late. I learned every system, every process. I took free online courses at night: supply chain management, operations, business fundamentals. MIT Open Course. Where became my college. I didn't call home, didn't ask for a single dollar. When my father's secretary sent me a birthday card with a $50 check from the family, I tore it up and threw it away. 4 years after I left Connecticut, I had saved enough to start my own consulting firm. Meridian Consulting LLC. Just me, a laptop, and a rented desk in a co-working space. I kept my name off everything public. No LinkedIn profile, no press releases. All business went through the company name and my lawyer. Why the secrecy? Because I knew my family. If they found out I was succeeding, they'd find a way to take credit or tear it down. Some people build empires to prove their worth. I built mine in silence because silence was the only language my family had ever taught me. Grandmother Margaret died 2 years ago, when I was 30. I flew to Connecticut for the funeral, sat in the back pew, watched my father deliver a eulogy about a remarkable woman who dedicated her life to family. The irony was so thick I could taste it. At the reception, I kept to myself. No one seemed to notice I was there, which was exactly how I wanted it. But 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of. Eleanor Smith, from a Boston firm specializing in estate planning. "Ms. Ivins, I represent your grandmother's separate estate. She established a trust fund in your name 8 years ago, with explicit instructions that no other family member be informed of its existence." I nearly dropped my phone. The trust contained $800,000. "She left a letter for you as well," Eleanor continued. "Would you like me to read it?" I said yes, though my voice didn't sound like my own. "My dearest Heather," Eleanor read, "I know what they did to you. I know about the tuition, the promises, all of it. I argued with your father until I had no words left. He wouldn't listen. He never does. This money is yours. No strings, no conditions. Use it to build the life you deserve, the life they tried to take from you. Remember what I always told you. Don't let anyone say you're not worthy. When they finally see your worth, it will be too late for them. I believe in you. I always have. All my love, Grandma Margaret." I used part of that money to expand Meridian Consulting. The rest I kept as insurance, for a day I hoped would never come, but always knew might. That day came 3 weeks ago. Let me tell you about Meridian Consulting today. 15 employees, $4 million in annual revenue, offices in Back Bay, Boston, the kind of address that makes people take you seriously before you even open your mouth. I wear Cartier now, not because I need to impress anyone, but because I earned every piece myself. We specialize in logistics optimization, helping companies streamline their supply chains, reduce costs, improve efficiency. It's not glamorous work, but it's profitable, and I'm good at it. Here's the part that would make you laugh if it weren't so painfully ironic. One of our biggest clients is Ivan's Logistics, my father's company. They signed a 5-year service contract with us 3 years ago. We handle their route optimization, warehouse management consulting, and carrier negotiations. The contract is worth about 40% of their annual revenue in operational savings. My father has no idea. All communications go through my team. All contracts are signed by my CFO, Daniel Reeves. The few times Richard Ivins has praised Meridian Consulting at industry events, he's been praising his own daughter's work. The daughter he told everyone was worthless. 3 weeks ago, I received a formal invitation to his retirement party. Gold embossed lettering. "Richard Ivins requests the pleasure of your company." I almost threw it away. Almost. But then I thought about Grandma Margaret. about 12 years of silence, about every promise broken and every door closed in my face. I RSVP'd yes. Not because I wanted reconciliation, not because I hoped things had changed. I went because I knew, with absolute certainty, that my father would do something unforgivable. And when he did, I wanted to be there to say goodbye on my own terms. I just didn't know how right I would be. The Fairfield Country Club hasn't changed in 30 years. Same Swarovski chandeliers, same pretentious valet service, same crowd of old money and new ambition pretending they belong together. I wore a black Valentino dress, simple, elegant, expensive. My grandmother's pearl earrings, Cartier watch, Hermes Birkin bag. Everything I owned, I'd bought myself. That mattered to me more than the labels. Linda intercepted me at the entrance. She'd aged, but her smile hadn't. Still that perfect mask of warmth that hid something colder underneath. Her dress was Chanel, her diamonds were large, and her eyes did a quick inventory of my outfit before she spoke. "Heather, you came." Her tone suggested this was a pleasant surprise and a minor inconvenience. "Your father wasn't sure you'd have something appropriate to wear." I smiled. How thoughtful of him to worry. Inside, 200 guests mingled beneath crystal light. The who's who of Connecticut business, bankers, lawyers, executives, politicians. I recognized some faces from my father's old dinner parties. None of them recognized me. Marcus swept past with a model thin blonde on his arm, not even glancing my direction. He was telling someone about his vision for the company's future. Classic Marcus. All confidence, no substance. I found my seat assignment. Table 14. The far corner near the service entrance with friends of the family I'd never met. Not the family table, not even close. I wasn't surprised, but I noted it. A waiter offered champagne, Dom Perignon, nothing but the best for Richard Ivans's big night. I took a glass. Across the room, I caught my father's eye. He nodded once, a dismissal disguised as acknowledgement, then turned back to his real guests. The evening was just beginning, and I had a front row seat to my own family's contempt. I've learned, over the years, that the best information comes from staying quiet and keeping your ears open. From my corner table, I watched and listened. The acoustics in that ballroom carried conversations better than people realized. My father was holding court near the bar, surrounded by business associates. I heard him mention operational restructuring and strategic partnerships, standard executive speak. But then, "Meridian Consulting has been transformative for us," he was saying to a silver-haired man I recognized as a major shipping executive. "They're the backbone of our operations now. Whoever runs that company is a genius." The other man nodded. "I've been trying to get a meeting with them for months. Very private operation. Do you know who's behind it?" My father shrugged. "Never met them personally. Everything goes through their legal team and account managers. But honestly, I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering results." I took a sip of champagne to hide my smile. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, my CFO. "Contract renewal docs from Ivan's Logistics arrived today. They want another 5 years. Waiting on your decision." I typed back, "I'll have an answer by end of week." What my father didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Meridian's contract with Ivan's Logistics was coming up for renewal. If we walked away, they'd lose 40% of their operational efficiency overnight. In logistics, that's not just an inconvenience, that's a death sentence. I hadn't decided what to do yet. Part of me wanted to keep the professional relationship separate from the personal toxicity, but as I watched my father bask in praise for his company's success built partly on my work, I felt something shift. Tonight would determine everything. I needed a refill on my champagne. Or maybe I just needed to move, to shake off the strange energy building in my chest. At the bar, I ran into the extended family firing squad. Aunt Susan, Linda's younger sister, spotted me first. Her face did that thing where surprise becomes pity, becomes condescension in about half a second. "Heather, oh my goodness, I almost didn't recognize you." She looked me up and down. "You look, well, still up in Boston, doing whatever it is you do?" "Consulting," I said. "Supply chain management." "Oh, how nice." The way she said it made it sound like I'd told her I collected bottle caps. Are you seeing anyone? Your father mentioned you're still single. 32, right? Time flies. Before I could respond, Uncle David joined in. Richard was just telling me you're still figuring things out. Nothing wrong with being a late bloomer, I suppose. Not everyone is meant for traditional success. I realized, with cold clarity, what had happened. My father had briefed them, given them talking points about the family disappointment, set the narrative before I even arrived. Richard said you had some emotional difficulties after leaving school, Aunt Susan continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Mental health issues. So brave of you to come tonight despite everything. I felt my grip tighten on my champagne glass. Not from hurt. I was long past that. From the sheer audacity. I appreciate the concern, I said, keeping my voice steady. But I'm doing very well, actually. Better than I've ever been. They exchanged glances. The kind that says, "Poor thing doesn't even know how far she's fallen." I excused myself before I said something I'd regret, but a plan was forming in my mind. Cold, clear, inevitable. Marcus found me on the terrace looking out at the golf course. The September air was cool, and the stars were just starting to appear. Well, well, his voice came from behind me, heavy with contempt. The prodigal daughter. I didn't turn around. Marcus? He stepped beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Tom Ford, probably a gift from our father. Dad's about to give his speech. Wanted to make sure you weren't planning any dramatic scenes. Why would I do that? Because you've always been jealous. He said it like it was established fact. The way you stormed off after the tuition decision. The way you disappeared to Boston like some wounded animal. You've never gotten over it. Now I turned. Looked at my stepbrother in his $5,000 suit, his Rolex, his perfectly styled hair. Is that what you tell yourself? His eyes hardened. I heard you started some kind of company up there, playing businesswoman. He laughed, short and cruel. How long until it fails? 6 months? A year? Then you'll come crawling back, begging Dad for help. I won't. You will. You always do. You're weak, Heather. You always have been. I could have told him then. About Meridian, about the contract, about how his precious company's success was built on the work of the sister he dismissed. But I didn't. Because some revelations need the right stage. You know what, Marcus? You can believe whatever makes you feel better. I started to walk past him. But I promise you this. After tonight, you're going to wish you'd treated me differently. His laugh followed me inside. Dismissive, arrogant. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The ballroom lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. My father climbed the steps to thunderous applause, the conquering hero of Connecticut logistics, taking his final bow. Thank you, he said, his voice carrying that practiced warmth he'd perfected over decades. 40 years in this business. It's been one hell of a ride. Laughter. More applause. He began his speech, thanking partners, employees, mentors, thanking God, thanking luck, taking credit for everything. Then came the family segment. I couldn't have done any of this without my incredible wife, Linda. He gestured to her table. 30 years of putting up with my late nights and business trips. You're a saint. More applause. Linda dabbed at her eyes, perfectly on cue. And my son Marcus, who will be taking over as CEO come January. Richard beamed with pride. The future of Ivan's logistics. I couldn't be prouder. Standing ovation. Marcus rose, waved, the picture of corporate royalty. Then my father's eyes found me, and something shifted in his expression. Something mean. And of course, my daughter, Heather. The spotlight swung to my table. I felt 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me. No degree, no real career, just freeloads off the family. He paused for comedic effect. But hey, at least she showed up tonight. Maybe someday she'll find a rich husband to take care of her. The room erupted in laughter, real laughter, the kind that comes from people who think they're in on a joke, not realizing they're watching cruelty dressed up as comedy. I sat perfectly still, didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't look away. I just waited for the laughter to fade, and then I stood up. The room went quiet as I rose. I could feel every eye on me. Some curious, some pitying, some already preparing to witness a breakdown, the unstable daughter finally cracking under her father's harmless joke. I picked up my champagne glass. Slowly, deliberately. My father's smile faltered, just slightly. He hadn't expected me to react. I never did. I was supposed to sit there and take it, like I always had. I raised the glass toward him. "Congratulations on your retirement, Dad." My voice was clear, steady, loud enough for every microphone in the room to pick up. 40 years in business, quite an achievement. I paused. "You taught me a lot. About hard work, about sacrifice, about exactly what kind of loyalty family can expect from you." The silence was absolute now. I could hear someone's ice clinking in their glass 3 tables away. "So here's to you." I lifted my champagne higher. "Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me." I set the glass down without drinking. Then I picked up my Birkin bag, turned, and walked toward the exit. My Louboutin heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the only sound in that cavernous room. I didn't run, didn't hurry, just walked, spine straight, head high. Behind me, silence. Complete, total, devastating silence. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered something I couldn't hear. But mostly there was just the echo of my footsteps and 200 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The daughter who was supposed to be broken had just walked out on her own terms. I pushed through the double doors and stepped into the night. And for the first time in 12 years, I could breathe. I was almost to my car, a Tesla Model S, black, custom plate reading MRDIAN1, when I heard footsteps behind me. Heather, stop right there!" Linda's voice, shrill and furious. I kept walking. "What do you think you're doing?" She grabbed my arm, spinning me around. Her face was red beneath the country club lights, her careful composure cracked. "Do you have any idea what you just did? You humiliated your father in front of everyone." I looked at her hand on my arm until she removed it. "I humiliated him?" I asked quietly. "I think you have that backwards." My father appeared behind her, his face a thundercloud. 200 guests were probably watching from the windows. He was aware of that. I could see him calculating. "Get back inside," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Apologize. Now." "No." The word hung in the air between us. "This isn't a negotiation, Heather. I'm your father. I'm telling you." "You're telling me what?" I cut him off, something I'd never done in my life. That I should go back in there and let you keep using me as your punchline? That I should smile while you tell 200 people I'm worthless? It was a joke. It was the truth of how you see me. And I'm done pretending otherwise. I opened my car door. My father stepped forward. "If you leave now, you're done. Do you understand me? No more family, no more support, nothing." I almost laughed. "Dad, you cut me off 12 years ago. You just didn't have the courage to say it out loud." I slid into the driver's seat. "Tonight, I'm saying it for both of us." I started the engine. "Goodbye," and I drove away. I pulled into a rest stop about 20 minutes outside Fairfield and sat in my car, engine idling, hands still on the wheel. For a long moment, I just breathed. Okay, let me step out of the story for a second and talk to you directly. I know some of you watching this have been through something similar. Maybe not a retirement party, maybe not 200 witnesses, but that feeling of being the family disappointment, the one they talk about in whispers, the one whose success they refuse to see. I know you understand. If you've ever sat at a family gathering while someone made you the punchline, if you've ever smiled through pain because making a scene would only prove them right, if you've ever loved people who made you feel invisible, this story is for you. So here's what I'm asking. If any of this is resonating with you, drop a comment, tell me your story, or just let me know you're here. Because honestly, knowing I'm not alone in this, that means more than you can imagine. And if you want to know what happened next, and trust me, the next part is where everything changes, make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell, because what my father discovered in the weeks after that party, well, let's just say he learned exactly how wrong he was about me. Now, back to the story. The morning after the party, I woke up in my Boston apartment feeling lighter than I had in years, but I knew it wasn't over. Families like mine don't let go that easily. They would try to control the narrative, spin the story, Make me the villain. What they didn't know was that I had something they couldn't spin their way out of. Let me tell you about the week that followed. It started with text messages. Not from my father. He was too proud for that. But from cousins, aunts, family friends. People I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very concerned about my mental state. Heather, I heard about the party. Your dad says you're struggling. Do you need help? Susan told me you had some kind of breakdown. We're all worried about you, sweetie. Your father loves you. He just wants what's best. Maybe you should apologize and come home. The narrative was already being written. Poor Heather, unstable, jealous, had some kind of episode at the party. Richard Ivins, patient, loving father, doing his best with a troubled daughter. I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the more interesting call. My phone rang on Tuesday afternoon, a Connecticut number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Miss Ivins, this is James Crawford. I'm a partner at Ivins Logistics. The voice was polished, professional. I'm calling on behalf of Richard. He'd like to discuss mending fences. Really? Between you and me, there's been some concerning chatter about your connection to certain business partners. Rumors, probably nothing. But Richard thought it would be good to clear the air. I went cold. Rumors, business partners. They were fishing. What kind of rumors? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, something about our consulting partners at Meridian. Someone thought they'd seen you at their offices once. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. My mind raced. How? Who had seen me? When? I'm not sure what you're referring to, I said. But please tell my father I have nothing to discuss with him. I hung up. They were getting close. Closer than I'd realized. It was time to stop waiting and start acting. While I was fielding concerned texts in Boston, my father was facing a different kind of crisis in Connecticut. I learned later, much later, what happened in that boardroom. Richard Ivins had walked into what should have been a routine quarterly meeting. Instead, his CFO looked like he'd seen a ghost. We have a problem with Meridian Consulting, the CFO said, sliding a folder across the mahogany table. Their contract is up for renewal in 6 months. They haven't responded to our extension offer. Richard frowned. So, send another offer. Increase the terms if you have to. We've tried, 3 times. Their legal team just says under review. Then call their executives directly. We've tried that too. The CFO shifted uncomfortably. Sir, Meridian Consulting is extremely private. No one meets with their leadership. Everything goes through intermediaries. Richard's frown deepened. We've been working with them for 3 years. Someone must have met with them. No, sir. It's all been virtual meetings, legal representatives, account managers. No one at this company has ever met the actual ownership. A long silence. If they walk away from us, the CFO continued, we lose 40% of our operational efficiency overnight. It would take at least 18 months to find a replacement, and that's optimistic. In this market, I know what it means, Richard snapped. He stared at the folder. Something was nagging at him. The timing, the silence, the fact that this was happening right after. Find out who owns that company, he said. I don't care what it takes. I want a name by end of week. What Richard didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that the name he was looking for was already on his family tree. Thursday evening, my phone rang. Linda. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Heather, sweetheart. Her voice was honey and sugar, the performance of a lifetime. I've been so worried about you. Have you? Of course. Your family. That's what family does. She laughed softly, as if we were sharing a private joke. Listen, about the party, your father feels terrible. He didn't mean what he said. You know how he is, he was nervous trying to be funny. He said I had no future and no worth, in front of 200 people. He exaggerates when he's anxious, you know that. Linda paused, recalibrating. Why don't you come home this weekend? We could have dinner, just the 4 of us. Clear the air, start fresh. I could picture her sitting in that pristine living room, rehearsing this call, planning exactly which buttons to push. The concerned mother, the peacemaker, the bridge between troubled daughter and wounded father. Does Dad want to apologize? I asked. A slight hesitation. He wants to move forward, That's what matters, isn't it? So no apology. Heather, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you. Help me? Now I laughed. Linda, you've spent 22 years making sure I knew I wasn't really part of this family. Now you're calling to help me? Why? Another pause. Longer this time. I think we both know there's more going on here than just family drama, she said, her voice dropping its warmth. Whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, it would be better for everyone if you just came home and talked this through. No. I hung up before she could respond. They knew something. They just didn't know how much to be afraid of yet. The next morning, I drove to Eleanor Smith's office in downtown Boston. Eleanor had been my grandmother's lawyer and, since the trust fund, had become mine. Her office was sleek and efficient, glass and steel, Boston skyline views, the kind of place where serious business happened. I've been expecting you, she said when I walked in. I assume this is about Ivan's logistics. They're investigating Meridian, trying to find out who owns it. Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. Your anonymity was always going to be temporary. The question is, how do you want this to unfold? She spread documents across her desk. The Meridian contract with Ivan's Logistics, every clause, every renewal term, every exit provision, the trust fund documents, the company and corporation papers. Your contract includes a standard 30-day termination notice, Eleanor said, pointing to the relevant section. You can end the agreement for any reason. No penalties, no legal exposure. And my grandmother's trust? Completely separate from the Ivans family estate, legally unimpeachable. Richard has no claim to any of it, even if he tried to contest. She looked at me over her glasses. Margaret made sure of that. I stared at the papers. Everything was in order, everything was legal, every T crossed, every I dotted. What did my grandmother say about all this when she set up the trust? Eleanor smiled sadly. She said, "One day, Heather is going to need leverage, and when that day comes, I want her to have it." I felt tears prick at my eyes. Grandmother Margaret, protecting me even from the grave. She also said something else, Eleanor added. Tell her not to be cruel about it. Just be honest. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. I nodded. The truth it was then. That afternoon, I sat down with Daniel Reeves, my CFO, in Meridian's conference room. Daniel had been with me since year 2. He knew everything about my family, about Ivan's logistics, about why I'd kept my name off the paperwork. He was loyal, competent, and the closest thing I had to a true ally. They want to renew the contract, he said, scrolling through his tablet. 5 more years. Actually increase the terms by 12%. They're nervous. They should be. I pulled up the financial projections on the conference room screen. Numbers don't lie, and these numbers told a devastating story. If we walk away, Ivan's Logistics loses 40% of their operational efficiency within 60 days. In logistics, that's not a dip. That's a free fall. Their clients will start looking elsewhere. Their margins will collapse. Daniel nodded. Marcus just took over as CEO. If this hits on his watch, his reputation is finished before he starts. We sat with that for a moment. It felt surreal, holding so much power over people who had spent decades making me feel powerless. What do you want to do? Daniel asked. I'd been thinking about this for days, about Grandma Margaret's words, about revenge versus truth, about what kind of person I wanted to be. Draft the termination letter, I said finally. 30-day notice per the contract terms. No malice, no accusations, just business. And the reason? Strategic repositioning. That's all they need to know officially. I paused. But I'm also going to write a personal letter to my father. Separate envelope. He deserves to know exactly who he's been depending on, and exactly why that's ending. Daniel nodded. When do you want to send it? Monday. First thing. No more waiting. No more hiding. I spent all of Sunday writing that letter. Not the official termination notice. Daniel handled that. The professional language, the legal provisions, the clinical restructuring of client portfolio explanation that would go in the file. I wrote the personal letter. The truth. I went through 7 drafts. The first was too angry. Pages of accusations, every hurt catalogued and condemned. The second was too cold. The third was too desperate. The final version was simple, clean, factual. Dear Dad, you said I had no future. You told 200 people I was worthless. I want you to know something. The company you called the backbone of Ivins Logistics, Meridian Consulting, is mine. I built it. I own it. For 3 years, the daughter you dismissed has been a cornerstone of your business. I'm ending our contract, not as revenge, as a boundary. Grandma Margaret left me a trust fund you never knew about. She saw what you couldn't, that I was worth investing in. Everything I have, I built myself. With her faith and without your support. I don't need you to apologize. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know that I am not what you said I was. I never was. Don't contact me again. Heather Margaret Evans. I included my middle name deliberately, the name I'd added 3 years ago in honor of the only person in my family who'd believed in me. I also included a photocopy of the Meridian Incorporation papers. My name as sole owner clearly visible. I read the letter 3 times, checked for typos, checked for excessive emotion, found none, just the truth. Sometimes I thought, that's the most devastating weapon of all. Monday, 9 a.m. Courier confirmation. The package had arrived at Ivan's Logistics headquarters. Someone named Patricia Chen had signed for it. Richard's executive assistant. I remembered her from childhood. I sat in my office, watching my phone, waiting. 10:15 a.m. Missed call from Richard Ivans. 10:17 a.m. Missed call from Richard Ivans. 10:23 a.m. Missed call from Marcus Ivans. 10:31 a.m. Missed call from Linda Ivans. 10:45 a.m. Missed call from Richard Ivans. 11:02 a.m. Text message from Richard. Call me now. 11:15 a.m. Text message from Marcus. What the hell is this? Call us. 11:34 a.m. Text message from Linda. Heather, this is not funny. Pick up your phone. By noon, I had 12 missed calls, 8 text messages, and 2 voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I didn't respond to any of them. I had waited 12 years for this moment. They could wait a few more hours. At 2 p.m., my assistant knocked on my door. Ms. Ivans, there's a family who says they need to see you immediately. They're in the lobby. So, they'd driven to Boston, 5 hours of traffic and panic just to confront me in person. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the window, straightened my blazer. Send them to conference room B, I said. I'll be there in 5 minutes. This was it. The conversation I'd imagined 1,000 times. The confrontation I'd prepared for without knowing when it would come. I thought of Grandma Margaret, of her letter, of her faith in me. Don't be cruel, she'd said. Just be honest. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward the conference room. Time to be honest. Conference room B had glass walls. I'd chosen it deliberately. My 15 employees could see inside, though they couldn't hear. Witnesses, not to humiliate anyone, but to ensure the meeting stayed civil. Richard, Linda, and Marcus stood clustered near the window, looking out at the Boston skyline they'd never expected to see from this perspective. From my domain. My territory. My father turned when I entered. His face was gray, older than I'd ever seen him look. Heather. His voice cracked on my name. What is this? Hello, Dad. Linda. Marcus. I took a seat at the head of the conference table, calm, professional. I assume you received my letter. Your letter? Marcus stepped forward, jabbing his finger toward me. You can't just, this isn't. Sit down, Marcus. My voice was quiet but firm. I won't discuss anything with you yelling across the room. He looked at my father, uncertain. Richard nodded sharply. They sat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Richard leaned forward. This is all some kind of misunderstanding. What part? Meridian Consulting. You can't possibly, a company like that, you didn't. I did. I slid a folder across the table. Company registration, tax filings, client list. 3 years ago, your company signed a contract with mine. You praised my work at industry events. You called us transformative. You just didn't know you were praising me. Linda's face had gone pale. But you don't have a degree. You were just a what, Linda? A disappointment? A failure? I shook my head. I was a 20-year-old who was told to sacrifice her future. I built something anyway. Silence. My father stared at the documents like they might burst into flames if he looked hard enough. Okay. Richard's voice was strained, the mask of corporate composure cracking. I apologize. I apologize about the party. Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. Now, can we talk about the contract? You're sorry because you need something from me. That's not an apology. For God's sake, Heather. Marcus slammed his palm on the table. Do you know what happens if you pull this contract? 20% of our workforce, gone, because of your petty revenge. It's not revenge, it's a business decision. Bullshit. He was standing now, veins in his neck visible. You've been planning this for years, waiting to destroy us. This is sick. I planned nothing. I kept my voice level. I built a company. Your company chose to become dependent on mine. That's not my fault. You could have told us, Linda interjected, her voice high and strained. You could have said something. When? When you told me I didn't need education because I'd find a husband? When you spread rumors that I had mental health problems? When? She had no answer. I turned to my father. You want to know the worst part, Dad? I would have kept the contract going. I wasn't planning any of this. But then you stood in front of 200 people and told them I was worthless, that I had no future. I paused. You chose this, not me. Richard's jaw worked. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something like recognition in his eyes, like he finally understood what he'd done. Then it was gone. What do you want? He asked flatly. Nothing you can give me. There must be something. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I never did. I just want you to know the truth. Fine. Richard's voice went cold. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by the steel I'd known my whole life. If that's how you want to play this, you walk away from this family, you're done. No inheritance, nothing. I almost laughed. Dad, you cut me off at 20 years old. What inheritance? I could make things very difficult for you. I have connections, lawyers. On what grounds? I leaned forward. Every document is legal. Every contract was signed in good faith. There's nothing here you can sue me for, and we both know it. He glared at me. Don't be so sure. Actually, I am sure. Because my lawyer, who was also Grandma Margaret's lawyer, has already reviewed every possible angle. I let that sink in. You remember Eleanor Smith? Margaret used her specifically because she knew you'd try something like this someday. Linda gasped. Margaret knew? About all of this? She left me a trust fund. $800,000, specifically structured so you couldn't touch it. I pulled out a photocopy of the trust document. She knew exactly what kind of family she raised. That's why she protected me from it. Richard's face went from red to white. She had no right. She had every right. It was her money. I stood. This meeting is over. Heather, we're done. I've said everything I came to say. I walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you contact me again, calls, texts, showing up at my office, I will release every email, every document, every record of how this family has treated me. All of it is legal, all of it is backed up, and all of it would make a very interesting story for the business press. I opened the door. The receptionist will show you out. I stood in the doorway, watching them gather themselves. 3 people who had spent my entire life making me feel small, now looking very small themselves. My father rose slowly, like an old man suddenly aware of his age. Linda clutched her handbag like a shield. Marcus stared at me with something new in his eyes. Not contempt anymore, but fear. This isn't over, Marcus said. Yes, it is. I meant it. Every word. I spent 12 years building a life you tried to convince me I couldn't have. I did it without your help, without your approval, without your permission, and I'll continue to do it without any of you in my life. Linda's lower lip trembled, the performance of motherly concern. Heather, please. We're family. We share blood, Linda. That's all we share. I held the door open wider. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I'm setting a boundary. Don't contact me again. Don't mention me to your friends, your colleagues, anyone. Just let me go. Richard stopped in front of me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Father and daughter, strangers who happened to share a last name. "You really hate us that much?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, Dad, I don't hate you. That's what you don't understand." I met his eyes steadily. "I just don't need you anymore. And that's something you'll have to learn to live with." He had no response to that. They walked out through the lobby, past my employees who carefully pretended not to watch. The glass doors closed behind them. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work. Okay, let me pause here again. If you're still watching, first of all, thank you. This isn't easy to tell, and knowing you're listening means more than you know. If you think this is where the story ends, it's not. The fallout from that meeting rippled out further than I expected. When I sent that termination letter, I thought I was just setting a boundary, protecting my peace, walking away from people who had hurt me. I didn't anticipate what would happen to Ivan's logistics, or to my father's reputation, or to the family secrets that would come spilling out once people started talking. Here's my ask. If this story has moved you, if it's made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, your own worth, hit that like button. It helps more than you know, and subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, because the ending of this story, it's complicated, it's messy, and it taught me something about revenge that I didn't expect. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to walk away from family? Did it feel like freedom, or like grief? Or maybe both? I've read every comment on my previous stories, and they've helped me feel less alone in this. So please, share your thoughts. Now, back to the story. 1 week after that confrontation in my office, I received a phone call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who had information that changed everything I thought I knew about my family, and about why they really treated me the way they did. Let me tell you about that call. The caller was my Uncle Robert, my father's younger brother. Robert had always been the black sheep of the Ivans family, an artist, a dreamer, the one who didn't go into business. I hadn't seen him since my mother's funeral, hadn't spoken to him in over a decade. "Heather." His voice was older, rougher. "I heard what happened, at the party, at Richard's office. Word travels fast. Small community." He paused. "Listen, there's something you should know. Something I should have told you years ago, but I was too much of a coward." I sat down slowly. "I'm listening." "When your father said the family couldn't afford both your tuition and Marcus's, that was a lie." "I know, I figured that out." "No, you don't understand. It wasn't just that there was money available. There was a specific fund. Your mother set it up before she died, for your education. Enough to cover a full 4 years at any school in the country." My heart stopped. "Richard drained it, used it for Marcus's MBA, then told you there was no money." Robert's voice cracked. "Your mother wanted you to have choices, Heather. Richard stole them." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid of Richard. We all were." Robert exhaled. "Margaret, your grandmother, she found out. That's why she set up the trust for you. She couldn't get your mother's money back, but she could make sure Richard didn't take anything else." I thought about Grandma Margaret's letter. "I know what they did to you." She knew, all along. "Why are you telling me now?" I asked. "Because it's time the truth came out. All of it." He wasn't done. 2 months after I terminated the Meridian contract, the consequences became public. I wasn't trying to monitor what happened to Ivan's logistics. Honestly, I was trying to move on. But in the Connecticut business community, news travels fast, especially bad news. The company announced a 20% workforce reduction. 70 employees laid off, right before the holidays. The press release blamed market conditions and strategic restructuring, but everyone knew the real story. Their biggest consulting partner had walked away, and they couldn't recover. Marcus, barely 3 months into his role as CEO, was already being questioned by the board. His vision for the future was crumbling under the weight of his father's bridge burning. Richard came out of retirement to help manage the crisis. The triumphant exit he'd planned, the legacy he'd built, was unraveling. But the real damage was to their reputation. Word spread. Not from me, I kept my mouth shut. But 200 people had watched my father humiliate his daughter at that party, and when those same people heard that the daughter was actually his company's most important business partner, the whispers started. Did you hear about Richard Ivins? Mocked his own daughter, turns out she was keeping his company afloat. Always thought there was something off about that family. In Connecticut business circles, reputation is everything. And Richard's was crumbling. A former colleague told me that at a recent industry dinner, Richard sat alone. No one wanted to be associated with the man who'd publicly disowned the daughter who'd secretly been his backbone. I didn't feel triumphant hearing this. I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt tired. Grandma Margaret had been right. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. I didn't have to do anything else. The truth did it all by itself. 6 months later, I sat in a therapist's office in Beacon Hill. Not because I was falling apart, because I was finally ready to put myself back together. You don't seem like someone who needs therapy, Dr. Patel said during our first session. Everyone needs therapy, I replied. I'm just finally letting myself admit it. We talked about my family, about the years of invisibility, about the burden of building success in silence, about the strange grief of cutting ties with people who were supposed to love me. Do you regret what you did? She asked. No. And I meant it. I regret that it had to happen, but I don't regret protecting myself. Outside of therapy, my life was good. Better than good. Meridian was thriving. We'd replaced the Ivans contract with 3 smaller clients, more diversified, more stable. Daniel got a promotion. I hired 4 new employees. We moved to a bigger office with views of the harbor. I reconnected with Uncle Robert. We had dinner once a month. He told me stories about my mother, the real ones, not the sanitized versions my father had fed me. She'd been fierce, apparently, stubborn, a fighter. You're just like her, Robert said. She'd be so proud of you. I still kept the photo of Grandma Margaret on my desk. I visited her grave every month, left flowers, told her about my life. It felt strange talking to a headstone, but also healing. I did it, Grandma, I told her one spring morning. I didn't let them define me. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. If I listened closely, I could almost hear her voice. I knew you would, sweetheart. I always knew. So here's what I learned. If you want the moral of this story, your worth is not determined by a degree. It's not determined by your family's opinion. It's not determined by who believes in you or who tries to tear you down. Your worth is determined by what you build when no one is watching, by who you become when everyone counts you out, by the life you create with your own 2 hands. My father thought he was teaching me a lesson at that retirement party. He thought he was putting me in my place. What he actually did was set me free. I don't hate my family. That's the part people struggle to understand. Hate takes energy. Hate is a chain. I'd rather spend that energy on people who deserve it, on work I believe in, on relationships that nourish me, on a life that's truly mine. Boundaries aren't about revenge. They're about protection. They're about saying, this is where my life begins and your damage ends. If you're in a family that makes you feel small, if you have people in your life who see your potential as a threat instead of a gift, if you've ever been the family disappointment, the scapegoat, the invisible one, I see you. I've been you. And I promise you, there is life on the other side of walking away. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Check the description for more stories like this one. And remember, you are not what they said you were. You never were. You are so much more. Until next time, this is Heather, and I'm finally free.